Next is the patient-centered deontological theories. To begin, let's clarify the classification of patient-centered deontological theories. Unlike their duty-based, agent-centered counterparts, these theories focus on rights rather than duties. They often considered agent neutral, providing moral agents with reasons that are not contingent on individual perspective. So, what are the cores and restrictions? So, at the heart of the patient centered deontological theories lies a core and right, an individual rights against being used merely as a means for producing positive consequences without their explicit consent. This right extends to various aspects, including prohibition of using another person's body, labor, and talents without their agreement. So, next is the illustrative version of the philosophers. So, several philosophers have explored and contributed to patient-centered deontological theories. Notable figures include Robert Nozick and Eric Mack among the libertarians, as well as Michael Otsuka, Hillel Steiner, and Peter Valentin among left libertarians. Their works reflects a commitment to the core rights against using others without consent. So let's move on to the next slide. Is that the applications to classical hypothetical cases. So, patient centered deontological offers a unique lens through which classical ethical dilemmas are examined. Take, for an instance, the trolley problem. Unlike the agent centered theories that focuses on agent mental state, patient centered theories scrutinize whether the victim's body, labor, or talents are used as means to justifying the consequences. So, in this patient-centered deontological theories, in handling other ethical dilemmas, the application of patient-centered deontological extends to various ethical dilemmas. So, presenting distinction in scenarios like acceleration cases, while agent-centered deontological it might permit certain actions like patient-centered deontologists emphasize the prohibition of using of another as a central criterion. Uh, Next is the integration and with consequentialism. However, patients-centered deontologists recognize that the core right against using others may not be account for all moral wrongs. As a result, there's a need to integrate consequentialist derived moral norms to provide a comprehensive account of morality. Next is the agent relative reason giving. So these deontologies are often conceptualized in agent neutral reason giving terms. Yet they face a philosophical paradox where violating one person's right is justifiable to protect rights of the others. This challenge has prompted a reconsideration of agent relative natures of the theories. So what is the resolution of the paradox? While grappling with the paradox, proponent of the patient-centered deontologies may find merit in abandoning agent-neutral pretenses. Instead, conceiving rights as giving agent relative reasons could offer a more nuanced understanding, even though challenges persist in reconciling conflicting moral obligations. So, what are the challenges of accounting for numbers? So, lastly, a significant challenge for patient centered deontologists is how to account for the significance of numbers without adopting the consequentialism or reviving the paradox of deontology. This ongoing dilemma prompts a critical examination of how numerical consideration aligns with deontological constraints. So, to further understand patient centered deontological theories, we're going to give another example of it. So, consider a medical scenario where a patient is in an urgent need of life saving organ transplant. In a patient centered deontological framework, the focus is on respecting the rights of individual. The patient has the right to decide whether decide what happens to their body. Therefore, harvesting organs from an unwilling or uninformed donor, even if it could save multiple lives, would be considered morally impermissible. So the core right against being used without consent takes precedence, highlighting the patient centered nature of this deontological approach. So, in conclusion, the patient centered deontological theories presents a compelling approach to moral philosophy, emphasizing individual rights and prohibition of using others without consent. So, as we navigate the complexities of ethical dilemmas and strive for coherent moral frameworks, the integration of consequentialist considered and consideration and agent relative nature of reason giving remain key areas of exploration within this intriguing branch of the ontology. So, next part we're going to talk about is the contractualist deontological theories. So, at the core of the contractualist deontological theories lies the notion of morally wrongs acts, which are delineated by principles that individuals in the hypothetical social contract would willingly accept. So, this perspective draws inspiration from historical social contract theories that have sought to establish the basis for moral norms within the community. So, what is the normative or metaphysical ambiguity? So, the nature of contractualist counts is marked by intriguing ambiguity. Scholars like Thomas Scanlon and David Gunther propose that these accounts function more effectively as metaethical constructs, providing that ontological and epistemological understanding of moral notions. So, what is the patient-centered constructions? So, when viewed as a first-order normative account, the contractualist deontology aligns closely with the patient-centered approach. The central obligations within this framework is to only act in ways towards others that they have explicitly or implicitly consented to. However, the resilience on consent as a moral foundation poses challenges, with critics questioning the practical and moral legitimacy of building an entire ethical framework on individual consent. So let's talk about mm, the uh, methical variation. So notable scholars such as Thomas Callion propose that metaphysical versions of contractualism, Scanlon's contractualism, for instance, centers on norms justifiable to each other. So importantly, the metaphysical nature of contractualism does not inherently lead to specific deontological ethics. So what are the challenges of consent on as a moral foundations? So it is crucial to recognize uh, that the application of the metaphysical contractualism does not consistently lead to the ontological ethics. John Harsanyi, first, for instance, argues that the parties engaged in a social contract might prefer utilitarian principles over the proposed deontological ones. So, what are the divergent ethical outcomes of this? So, understanding that the applications of contractualist theories does not consistently yield deontological ethics is essential. Ethical outcomes may diverge based on a contextual factors, challenging us to navigate the complexities of moral decision making within a societal framework. So, to further understand this, we're going to give an example. So, imagine a small, isolated community facing a scarcity of resources. The community decides to draft a social contract to fairly distribute the available resources. According to the contractualist deontological theories, actions that violate the principles agreed upon this social contract would be deemed morally wrong. For instance, if an individual were to hoard resources beyond their fair share, contravening the agreed upon principles of resources distribution, their actions would be considered morally reprehensible within the context of contractualist deontology. So, in conclusion, contractualist deontological theories offer a nuanced perspective on morality, rooted in social contracts and consent. The interplay between normative and metaphysical considerations adds a complexity to the ethical discourse. So, challenging us to explore foundations of right and wrongs in a social context. So, thank you for listening.